Hey everybody, it's me, the Einstein on Wall Street, here at the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange for Trade Like Einstein, for Money News Network, and Einstein and Odds. We talk about everything here. I like to tell you stories that are in finance, food, fashion, and fun, right? And we interview people who have a story to tell, right? Whether it's, it's a groundbreaking thing, we're breaking every ceiling here. The New York Stock Exchange is an incredible forum for. Today we've got McGraw-Hill going public, a publishing company that when I actually worked on the floor originally was the largest publishing company for all educational and everything and magazines and whatnot. It ended up going private for many, many years, but it was the first stock I ever traded. It's a long story, but I ended up paying way too much for the stock. I got reprimanded by my boss, but it was I kind of threw my feet in the fire for the first day of work. Anyway, it's now going public once again. So I love bringing you people who have a story to tell. And you know what? Crypto, Bitcoin, blockchain. Obviously, it's on everybody's mind, especially where it's trading now. If you go back to the beginning, nobody had any interest in it at a time. In fact, the first guy, the great fun first story about Bitcoin is that he bought a piece of pizza with a Bitcoin that now would have been worth millions and millions of dollars. Anyway, there aren't that many publicly traded companies that deal with that industry. There are a few, but what's fascinating about Bitcoin, obviously, is that there's a limited amount of Bitcoin that there is. However, there are miners and there are companies that are what are they? Tell me.
Bitcoin mining ASICs.
Hey, Bitcoin mining ASICs. So anyway, today I brought you Gwen Lauber. She is the
Vice President of Corporate Affairs
at Canaan Inc, correct?
Yes.
And you guys make?
We make Bitcoin mining ASICs.
Okay.
We're the picks and shovels of the Bitcoin mining industry.
Okay, so we're so happy to have her here today. Her company is public. It is on the NASDAQ. No disrespect. It's all good. And we're going to kind of break down the story, talk about blockchain, talk about crypto, talk about the manufacturing of it, and talk about how it is in a retail level, institutional level, where the company is. And, we want to tell the story because there's a huge story to tell in this industry. So welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
My
very
pleasure.
Much.
So people know Bitcoin, they know crypto, they know it from all different angles. But obviously, from my understanding, there's a limited number of Bitcoin out there, right?
Yes.
And so how is it possible that we're manufacturing more? Or give me that explanation.
Yes, there's a limited number of coins,
right,
but they'll be generated between when it started in 2009
right,
through 2140.
Okay.
So even though if you're not in it now, you still have chance. More coins will be generated.
So the supply
Yes.
is not, there is a max that they're going to be,
Yes.
but they're still in the midst of being manufactured.
Yes.
Okay, so give me a little look. It's fascinating to me that are there individuals who are actually mining Bitcoin?
Yes, and actually it started out with just being individuals. The founder of our company started out just because he was a Bitcoin enthusiast,
right,
generating using his home computer to generate coins.
So really?
He realized you could make a more efficient machine, and the more efficient you are, the more coins you could manufacture.
Right.
So he created the Bitcoin mining ASIC that only mines for Bitcoin. Its one job is to solve the mathematical equation, the algorithm that generates one coin.
So explain, what does ASIC mean for those who don't understand that?
That's an application-specific integrated circuit.
Okay.
So it does one thing really, really well.
Okay, and you guys are the best at what you do.
We are the best. There are three companies who are in our industry, three main players.
Right.
We're number 2 in the market.
Okay.
But I do believe that since we invented the machine, we make the best product.
Right.
We make a durable, reliable product that our customers love.
Right. And so explain to me, how does that work? So there's retail utilization of it and there's institutional.
Yes.
How does that differ? So who would be, are there individuals who are actually mining it, or is it much more an institutional thing?
Yes, there are individuals, but in the last probably 5 to 10 years, it's become more institutional.
Okay.
There are publicly traded companies in the U.S. and perhaps in other countries as well that specifically their business is to mine for Bitcoin.
Right.
So they need to negotiate an extremely inexpensive power source.
Right.
They need to be able to negotiate good prices on their machines, and then they need to execute on that vision. How to generate coin, how to keep the machines up and running. They have all sorts of issues that keep them up at night.
Right. So I mean, you think about that. So the key barrier to entry in this is obviously the energy source. Right, right. And so how does that work? I mean, where do we, you mentioned when we spoke last night, you talked about, so there's just, I mean, somebody can set it up. Obviously, each state in the United States has a different cost based on how their grid is set up.
Yes.
So it's a state-friendly system. Is that how it works also? And you also mentioned about potential for solar and hydro that globally. But give me tell me a little more about that.
So right now, and we do some self-mining as well. Okay. So what we look for is a partner with a really inexpensive power contract. Right. We're hoping to get it for power our electricity per kilowatt hour for less than 4 cents.
Okay.
So you want it as inexpensive as possible, which makes green energy a really good source.
And is that something, is it a sustainable business model?
Yes.
I mean, is that, because I remember back in the early days when people were talking about it. I mean, look, my experience with Bitcoin, first I didn't know anything about it, then I kind of resisted it because I didn't understand it, and then I was going like, wow, this is fascinating. Obviously, as it became a more something, that it was talked about on a regular basis, I think when it came into my world more was when it started to be accepted as a payment system and whatnot. Yes. When people sort of realized, okay, this is here to stay, and it's a big deal, and obviously watching the price go up.
Yes.
Everybody, and then of course I got really frustrated because I knew about it when it was trading at 10,000, 20,000 and watching it go up. And so that, there's always that, looking back in the mirror or shoulda, woulda, coulda is not a trading strategy. Yeah. So you know what, at the end of the day, it is here to stay, Bitcoin per se. And for me, I think it's a fascinating thing how it's actually made, because at the end of the day, it's very funny. There was a Saturday Night Live skit with Elon Musk. Right, he was the host, right? And they were asking him, what is Bitcoin and what is Dogecoin? And he kept giving answers, and they're going like, but what is it? I mean, nobody can really explain it, and it's so fascinating that it is. Yeah. The whole blockchain, what does that mean? The ledger, how does it exist? What are the uses of it? And so you're going back to the beginning. You're going to the actual manufacturing of it. And so your company makes the picks and shovels, right, that actually do it. So number one is you've got to find a state or a country that obviously where the energy source is, because it's a huge drain on that. Right. And that's obviously, look, it's cost of goods sold. We saw it now with tariffs, right? The biggest problem was when I was trying to analyze what was going on with the tariffs, and people, there were boats lined up in the China harbor, right, that were not able to take on product because they didn't know what the cost of goods sold was. Right. And in the business model, at the end of the day, you have to find out what it costs to make your thing, to make it, whether it's sustainable. What makes this so interesting is, though, there are going to be costs of making it, but then it's also an investment. So you're making something that's going to go up in price. Yeah. So I would bet that calculation is a little bit complicated.
Yeah, it is, and there's always improvements on the technology. Right. So what you're buying today, just like any technology, but in Bitcoin it becomes more sensitive to it. So what the machines you're buying today, whether an institution or a retail person, it's going to be out of date in a couple years. So you have to continually invest in your equipment so that it's running efficiently and powerfully enough so that you can continue to generate coin, because you're competing with the rest of the world to make coin, to produce the coin.
So let's say someone engages your company.
Yes.
They get machinery to make Bitcoin. And in 2 years, are you constantly doing R&D to become always on the cutting edge, to be state of the art?
That's right.
And so, do I need to buy new equipment? Can I? Does one setup? I mean, we talked about this yesterday. All the different when you have a corporation and you have a business model, you're always trying to look for other revenue streams. We know that the best way for companies to grow are multiple revenue streams, and they have just off the ground. There are a number of them.
Yes.
Right. The sale of the product, and also the investment in Bitcoin per se. But let's say in 2 years, what you're making now is a little bit obsolete, and are you constantly remaking it?
So that's when our customers come back. We're on our 15th generation of product.
Amazing.
And we're constantly coming up with the next best thing, the next fastest, the next most powerful, and the most energy efficient machine. Okay. So customers in 2 years, they need to upgrade their fleet so that they can stay competitive with all the other new entrants and everybody else who's mining. Right. So it's the great thing for our business is that your customers just have to keep coming back.
Yeah. I like that. So that is a great part of the business model.
Yeah.
Oh, that's spectacular. And then they'll come back and buy new equipment, or is it
Exactly.
do you upgrade the equipment, or they have to
Upgrade.
actually? So
No,
it is an
upgrade.
upgrade. So then when you sign on a customer, it is a long-term relationship.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is important.
Well, and that's the thing. It's to us, to our company. It's very important to make long-term relationships.
Yep.
It's very important to. We have a customer who the other day said, our engineers wish we would only buy your machines.
Right.
Because the machines are so good, they're durable, they know they can plug them in and they run, and they
Right.
don't have to worry. So if you delight your customer, then hopefully the customer will always come back.
Right, but by that you're saying though that people who use your equipment are also using other companies' equipment.
Yes.
What would be?
Yeah.
Is there an advantage of that, or is it just that they started with others and they came to you? Explain
Mostly
that to
because
me.
we were late to the game in the
you were.
U.S.
Oh, okay.
We entered the U.S. market, I think, in 2023. We had
Okay.
our first U.S. sale.
It's a Singapore-based company, right?
Yes.
That came to the U.S. in 2023, but it was started in 2008 or
2013.
13.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and so you were late to the table coming here.
Yes.
Is the U.S. The largest market based on the cost of electricity here, or what makes the U.S. the biggest market?
Yeah, I think so. So part of the tenets, as you touched on in your introduction, is that it's important for the blockchain to remain decentralized.
Right.
It's important for Bitcoin to work is for it not to be owned by any one person, but to be owned and controlled by everyone.
Right.
The ledger is open. You can see who owns things. It's
Right.
really transparent
Yeah,
that
yeah.
way. So that's important to us. So because
That's in the basic conception of Bitcoin and blockchain altogether.
Yes.
Which people need to understand. It's a lot longer than this conversation, but you should look
Yeah.
into it because it's incredibly fascinating and it is complicated. But at the end of the day, once you get it, I think our resistance to it, because it's
Yeah.
so new and different
Yeah.
still, even though it's been around for 20 years, it's
Yeah.
still, it's technology, and technology is fascinating. Some people are tech savvy, so I'm not.
Yeah.
I still don't even own a computer, but I've made it my life goal to
Right.
try and understand all the different levels of it.
Right. And you can't touch it, which I think
And you
scares
can't
people.
touch it,
Like
right.
I can
Right, I
hold
can't have a
gold,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I can't
exactly.
hold my Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So that makes it. The concept is kind of tough.
Right.
But once you read about it, once you study it, once you understand it,
Right.
and you understand how safe it is because it's decentralized, because no one can run off with your Bitcoin
Right.
unless you give them your passport.
Right,
Or, there
correct.
are issues like that. But I
Right.
think as Bitcoin matures, less incidents like that happen.
Right.
And people are starting to get more comfortable, and people are embracing it because they understand it's also because there's a limited number. You
Right.
can't print new Bitcoin in 2140. When it's gone, it's
right,
gone.
right.
It's all.
And we know
Yeah.
that, look, our world is all about supply and demand. The difference is, when we end up in a bad situation, whether it was the financial crisis of 2008 or during COVID, the Federal Reserve had to print more money, right? And
Yes.
as we know, the more money you print, it causes inflation, it affects interest rates, it affects everything. It affects
Yeah.
the inherent value. But the fact is that when anything is limited, first of all, the demand for it is all the more.
Yes.
It's amazing in a way that it took that long. I guess it's the fact that it's such a new thing. That for me, it's amazing. We talk a lot about AI now and how that is just like we're in the midst of an industrial revolution, trillions of dollars of capex being spent in it.
Yeah.
Is there globally, what is the amount of money that people are spending in the manufacture of Bitcoin? It's got to be just billions of dollars, no?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, you can scale it to however you want, right? So if you had one machine in your house running,
Right.
your economies of scale would be different than, there are
large
these huge
institution.
companies.
Right.
There's Marathon, there's Iris, there's Cipher Mining. There are all these really big companies, Clean Spark, that are generating and doing it more efficiently. So I don't know that you can put a price on that
Right.
because their goal is to take out costs constantly, to do it more efficiently, to upgrade their
Now,
machines.
those companies, are they, so they're making Bitcoin on a large scale?
Yes.
And what are they doing with their Bitcoin? Are they holding that as an asset as on the books of the company?
Yeah, I think it depends on the company. For a while, some companies had a strategy to sell everything that they mined.
Right.
But I think,
Just to keep cash flow.
but if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, which so many of them were, are, and
right.
now
And will
more
be,
are.
right.
Yeah. So if you believe in Bitcoin,
Right.
why would you sell it?
Right.
And I think a lot of companies are starting to do that. Our policy, we hold nearly, at the end of June, nearly 1,500 coins on our balance sheet.
At a value now of?
At a value of, what is it,
120,000,
120,000
right. So
times?
it's a lot, it's a lot of zeros.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But we are.
And that's Bitcoin that
We've mined
yourself.
ourselves.
Okay.
Yep. So we sell. We want them to be self-sustaining businesses.
Right.
So of the coins that are mined, we sell coins to pay for the power cost.
Okay.
And then we hold everything else on our books.
Right.
So because what we believe is that it'll continue to
go
increase
up
in
and then we
value.
go,
So
right.
why would you sell it? And
Right.
you know, they're treasury stocks these days. I'm sure you know a lot
Yeah.
of them that are more and more each day. It seems people are starting to have a treasury stock policy
Right.
where maybe you were in a donut business and all of a sudden you decide to pivot and just borrow money from investors
Right.
to buy coin to hold on your balance sheet
Right.
and just buy more and
Right.
hold more, because if you believe that this is going up in
Right.
value,
Yeah.
of course you would hold it.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
and that's
so
what we do.
That's what you do. So what is it? So that's a little bit of the history of the company. And so where are we now, and what does it look like in the near future?
So right now, we'll continue to, our main focus of our business, our core DNA
Right.
is just designing chips and making better and better machines.
Okay. And then so there's a whole team that is
So there's a
constant
team,
in R&D.
there's 200 engineers who work on that. We have
Is it still based in Singapore?
we have engineers around the world.
Okay.
We have some in China, some in Singapore, some
Right.
in Malaysia, and some in the US.
Right.
So pretty distributed. We have almost 500 patents, worldwide patents, protecting the technology that we've created.
So your product is different. It does stand alone from your competitors?
Yes.
It
Yeah,
does. Okay.
we think so.
Which
and
you
it's
make
the
the best of
experience.
breed in your opinion?
Exactly,
obviously. Okay.
exactly. They're wonderful machines. They're durable machines. You know, we don't have dead on arrival machines.
And this is the 15th incarnation of the machine.
15th, and
Wow.
you know, the 16th is about to come out, sometime this year.
Right.
So we'll continue to make better and better machines.
Right.
And then we have self-mining, which we do a little bit different, and we talked about that as well,
Right.
where we do it a little different than most. We do joint mining ventures. So we
Right.
have a partner who's an expert in getting energy contracts
Right.
and running a facility. We just supply our machines.
Okay.
So the cost of our machines, or the cost of our Bitcoin mining
So you're
venture
bringing in
is
other
less.
specialists within the industry to
Yes.
create sort of a team.
Yes.
As opposed to
Exactly.
you. So you're outsourcing those parts,
Yes.
which makes sense though. You don't need to be the expert
And
at
for
everything.
them, they get the benefit of having the lowest cost machines,
Right,
because we're not
and so
marking up the machines.
so
Those
that
are
what
machines.
you make then you own together? Is that sort of a
The coins we split.
You split,
And
okay.
typically, depending on the arrangement, usually we get about 65-70% of the
Okay.
coins, and they get the remainder.
Okay, so that's part of the business model.
Yes.
And what is so it is a stock listed on the NASDAQ stock exchange.
Yes.
It's trading for 85 cents or something.
Yes.
Okay, and so where
And that's down a little bit from
That is
where
down,
it was.
okay.
And a lot of that was the tariff talk has created a little uncertainty
Okay.
with buyers in the U.S.
Now explain to me that. So how does tariffs and the uncertainty around tariffs impact your business?
Yeah. We found that U.S. buyers, U.S. miners, were a little hesitant to buy because they weren't sure, is the tariff going to be an additional 10%? Could it be
product's being
more?
made abroad, though?
Yes, the products
it
are made
is.
abroad.
So the importing
For
of the
everybody.
actual
Yes.
manufactured product
Yes.
is tariffable.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. I didn't realize
Yes,
that.
and that
okay.
is, we had our first ever U.S. production run,
Okay.
which was a great success. The
Okay.
product quality was great. We were
Okay.
very pleased with
And
that.
was that in response to the potential uncertainty around tariffs?
Yes,
You decided
yes.
you keep it in-house,
Yes.
which a lot of companies are doing?
But it actually ended up being more expensive because the raw materials and the components that
Are
we
still
had
coming
to,
from abroad.
yes. So until that resolves, there's still
okay.
a little bit of an issue.
So think about that. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
I spoke to a friend yesterday who has a company called Dash, right? They are a producer, a manufacturer of housewares, right? And amazing. They got bought out by a European company. Last year they paid $7 million in tariffs. This year they're online to pay $270 million in tariffs.
Wow.
So we all know this has been a big part of what I've been talking about for the last number of months. It's a huge deal. The uncertainty around tariffs is what caused the stock market to fall fall off the cliff from February 19th until April 19th, right? In a 2-month period, we lost 22% of the market here. I know you looked at your 401k, it looked more like a 201k, and it's impacted industries everywhere. Why is the market still trading at record highs? For lots of different reasons, and it does impact what we're talking about here. There's a lot of money on the sidelines, a lot of sort of underinvestment in the market. People got caught off guard. They sort of pivoted out of equities when the new administration came in. They wanted to protect their earnings from the last couple of years, which has been a very robust stock market, up 20+%. And then the market sold off. They looked good for a minute. Then the market rallied back even quicker, and they're going, oh my God, we need to play catch up. But tariffs impact everything, right? And as I said for a minute there before, there was a period when Mr. Trump was throwing out the numbers of 185, 145% tariffs, that the increase in cost of an iPhone or one of your products could be tenfold. And so if you think about that, this company has tried to manufacture it here, but the components, that's the problem. You can't always, just making something here does not avoid all of the expenses and the tariffs, because the components of it still have to come from abroad. So that you found that net it was not efficient price-wise, because of the cost of the tariffs.
They were more expensive than to make them in the U.S.
Okay.
The parts were more expensive than the sum, so the tariff on bringing everything in just costs more.
Okay, so you're going to keep maintaining to make it abroad.
Well, and we're hoping it'll be resolved. We're hoping that this can work itself out, because it doesn't make any sense. If we want U.S. manufacturing, this is an issue that needs to be worked out.
That's what all the companies have been saying.
But in the meantime, it's the uncertainty. It's the customers don't know to buy, because they're like, well, what if I wait next week? Will it be more or less expensive? We don't know, so we'll just wait.
Okay, and so where was the stock trading, let's say, last year, before the uncertainty around tariffs?
Well, in December, January timeframe, Bitcoin had hit an all-time high.
Right.
So when it got to around 110, I think, we ended up popping up to about $3.
Okay, awesome.
And then in February, when there were rumblings about that, then we started trickling down. Okay. Fell to 2, and then it since sort of drifted off while the market was waiting.
Okay, so look, companies that go through this, right? I mean, obviously there's so many different components, the different business models, the different streams of revenue, and obviously it's been a hard time for all companies. We're seeing a lot of, even though we're still trading at record highs, the uncertainty is falling off a little bit. And I mean, so one of the reasons we're talking is because we want people to understand more about your company and have more eyes on it, and address what the problems were. Explain why it's down, which you just did in a really wonderful way. And now, the runway looks fairly clear, right? So there's a lot less uncertainty around the tariffs. I'm sure by now your company's been able to identify what the potential costs are on the tariffs. And we know that the president has really sort of stepped back from a lot of his bully tactics on that and realized that deals need to be made. And so that we are seeing one of the reasons we had yesterday we're here at the floor of the stock exchange. Yesterday, one of the reasons that we closed at record highs across all indices except the Dow was that we have a deal done with the EU. Apparently, we have a deal done with a lot of the Far East, right, with Laos and Philippines. And, a lot of these deals are being done. While we were focused on what was happening in the Middle East, a lot of backdoor diplomacy was being done. So I imagine you've identified that. And so, at the end of the day, what you want to look at, our investment in a company like yours is based on confidence, based on products in the pipeline and what the future looks like. Right. And so it's clear that, Bitcoin is not a hedge against the market or a hedge against inflation. People are buying it because of its return on investment, because of its long-term gain. And so you have Bitcoin on the books, which is your asset. You've got an amazing manufacturing company that's making Bitcoin. And you've obviously got, I would imagine that your people who are your customers are customers for a long time.
Yes.
Right? They don't come and leave.
Yes. Yeah,
right.
It's a very loyal customer base. And we also introduced about a year ago a consumer product line with the goal of in line with keeping Bitcoin decentralized.
Right.
We want people around the world to have access to doing their own mining.
Okay.
So we've come out with products where they're more quiet than your industrial machine. They're much more attractive than an industrial machine.
Right.
But they also can heat your home. They can heat a room in your house while generating Bitcoin, offsetting, depending on the cost of your energy, it offsets the cost of heating your home.
Wow.
So
that's really smart. So there are, and how big is that? How big is that market?
Well,
so far.
the
And
market
it's a new
itself
thing. It's
is
a year
huge.
old.
Yeah.
The market is huge. Do we have a figure on that market?
We don't.
It's
we
got to
haven't
be in the
looked,
billions of dollars,
because it would be
obviously.
anybody
It
who
would be
has
anybody,
a place
right?
to,
Exactly. So, but think about
We're
that.
in a New York climate for sure.
Right. And so, I mean, think about it. There are people who are like forever bulls. There are people who are forever Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And the loyalty to it is unbelievable.
Yes.
There's still the haters. There's still the non-believers. But
Yeah.
so be it. There's always going to be that way.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's clear it's here to stay, and it's clear it's an asset that has serious value. And so I find that to be a fascinating thing, that, you know, that takes a lot of ingenuity to come up with a retail product or a consumer product in that way. And so, you know, and so how many do we have? I mean, think about that. And then to make it so, you know, originally you obviously had a consumer product that were people who just wanted to mine Bitcoin and have that because they were just like, they were Bitcoin crazy. Yeah. But now you've actually spanned that out to the point where you're making it something so efficient that people can make the coin and then again heat their houses, which is so
think
smart.
About this.
Alternative,
so,
amazing.
A friend of mine lives in Long Island, right? So during the day, she can heat her home using solar panels.
Right.
And at nighttime, apparently, Long Island, allegedly, they charge 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour at nighttime because they want to encourage people not to use power during the day, to use it in the evening. So she could heat her house for virtually, you know, what is it, maybe 10 hours a day at 1.5 kilowatt hours to generate the machine energy for the machine. So you could, it would be so cheap versus what's your heating costs in the winter time?
I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So if you could
air
offset
condition
that,
and heating, imagine that.
If we could come up with cooling, I think would be the holy grail.
Well, go ahead.
But that's the thing. We want to have products that have utility. And have an economic benefit. And we're seeing that. We're seeing governments in other countries look at projects where, how can we heat a village if the byproduct of Bitcoin mining is heat, to heat a village and heat the hot water and generate Bitcoin as well for the.
And is that happening? I mean, are people starting to, I mean, that's starting to have traction.
It's starting to happen. We're seeing test projects on that, and I think that'll expand more in the years to come.
That is huge. And is there a part of the company that actually out there bringing in new customers in that way?
Yeah, we're working with energy companies and governments around the globe who are looking into doing this as a solution to solve the problem.
You know what? That is so genius. Look, once again, another revenue stream, and I love that part of it because, you know, the whole sustainable energy thing has been, and climate change has been one of those things that, you know, nobody believes it, or, you know, half of the people in the world believe it, half are complete non-believers. And the fact is that solar and you know, alternative energy in a lot of ways has been something, and ESG and, you know, investment in it has been so problematic. You would have thought, I mean, it's what one's mental is, you know, it's what thought process you're on, which glasses you're wearing. But, you know, it would make sense that why would we not? Look, we're living on this planet. There's limited time and our resources are limited. You know, and the more we destroy them and ruin them, I mean, you know, people are very interested in immediate gratification. So we're not thinking that, you know, we're burning down the rainforest and that's going to affect the oxygen and blah, blah, blah. People don't believe that, right? And the fact that our weather is changing in a big way. And so that's been one of the problems of people adopting solar. And it's an initial investment, but at the end of the day, if you're looking at the long game, it's incredibly efficient. So the fact that you're doing that, I think, is a huge asset to the company. And I would imagine in their, you know, once earnings come out and in their call, that should be, probably is a big part of the story.
It is. It is.
And that's a big part of what your future looks like.
It could be, it's a non-political story, right? Because whether you believe in climate change or not,
you still have to heat the village.
You have to pay to heat your home.
Yes, you do. You do.
If you want to avoid that, there are ways to avoid that, and we're coming up with products to help you do that.
You know what? I absolutely love that. And you also said that, so there are alternate, look, in other countries, they tend to use hydro, they tend to use solar, they tend to use wind a lot more than the United States. Scandinavia, you mentioned Norway being one of the bigger ones, and Denmark, right, who have adopted a lot of they are believers in climate change, and they are believers in sustainability as far as alternative energy goes. And so I would imagine they are super attractive. You know, they also are midnight sun. They have light most of the year and dark most of the year and all that. So I would imagine for them, this is a viable, very efficient potential, you know, savings. And on top of it, you know, the sexy part of it is you make Bitcoin at the same time. And as we watch, that Bitcoin makes new highs on a regular basis.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you know what, look, you've given us a great background on how this started. You know, I know that we talked about perception of the company, Singapore-based, and how it, but I think you've painted a really good picture about all these multiple streams of revenue and how it is such a global company.
Yes.
And that people should not have some kind of perception that it's being pigeonholed to one particular company where it comes from. You said there are engineers from all over the world that are part of it. You've clearly told the story about how how it lives in the United States and also how it's got a huge global potential in the future. So, look, the story sounds great, I mean, it's got me excited, and I think it should get everybody, at 85 cents, it seems, I would imagine. I'm not your financial advisor, disclaimer, but, sometimes companies that come off their highs or sell off, that kind of the baby gets thrown out with the bathwater, and that they are that the price of a stock can sell off. It can be very situational, and then sometimes people focus on something else. They leave the industry, they leave the sector, they're no longer interested. And that's why we do what we do, is to jumpstart people's eyes on a product, eyes on a sector. Bitcoin is in everyone's mindset. Efficiency, saving money should be, and and saving the planet is another one. And so it seems to me that you've got all of that, all those components together in a really good model. And you're part of the company. You are awesome.
Thank you, Peter.
So
Thank you.
You know what? Canaan Inc. Is that how people should
Yes.
know it? Okay, go check it out. And to me, it sounds like a great story. We all know that Bitcoin is becoming a big part of our life. It is definitely, look. The markets go up or down? Yes, that's going to happen. So we're not telling you that this is going up by any means, but the story sounds great. It's about efficiency. It's about sustainability. It's about Bitcoin and adding value and increased value and investing. Look, I'm a firm believer in investing in stocks, not stuff, right? And this has multiple streams of revenue, and it's by nature, you're creating something that we've watched over the number of years go up in value. And so on top of that, there are a couple of other parts of the components to the story. So it's a great story.
Great.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
and that's
Peter.
all I got to say about that.